Hey, it's Jeff W Welsh. Welcome to the Hardcore Happiness Podcast, where we talk about the art and science of how to create your best life. Expect to discuss mindset and purpose, the positive and the profound, and anything else that contributes to the healthiest, happiest, most successful life you can imagine. This is your sanctuary against fear-mongering and propaganda, the place to focus on a life of well-being and satisfaction and transform your world. I'm Jeff W Welsh, and this is Hardcore Happiness. Hey, happy August. This is the second episode of the Hardcore Happiness podcast, so I thought it'd be a good time right in the beginning to summarize some of the things that I've been writing and speaking about for some time. That way we kind of have a common vocabulary, and you can use this as a reference to go back to understand what all this is about. There's a lot of people that are on the internet saying it's a terrible idea to chase happiness as a life goal. You know, I saw someone the other day who's very well known. His whole concept was follow your bliss is a terrible idea. And they're right if you have the wrong definition of happiness in mind. I mean, there's more than one way to look at happiness. Let me explain. Happiness kind of comes basically in two flavors, if you will. There's two different phenomena that people lump together when we talk about happiness. The first is hedonic happiness. You've all heard about hedonism and that guy's a hedonist and all that. Basically, hedonic happiness is the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. It has no greater purpose than that. It's kind of understood now as fun. When you go to a great party or you've had a good day at an amusement park or something like that, the way you can tell hedonic happiness is that it's kind of random. It's frequently not something that you've worked towards for years. It's usually short-lived, a day or a couple of hours or maybe a great weekend, and it frequently comes with an emotional crash at the end of it. Hedonic happiness is fun, if you will, is not resilient to tragedy, and it's not long-lasting. I mean, by all means, enjoy it whenever you can, but generally it's not predictable, it's not sustainable, it doesn't involve self-growth or benefit anyone else, and therefore it's not a great life goal. I mean, how many times have you looked forward to a party and came home and it was not what you expected? And you were a little bit let down, or you had a phenomenal, great, crazy party weekend, and then when the Mondays hit again, you feel like, blah, I don't even want to do this. That kind of stuff is fun and it's great, but it's not something that you want to base your whole life on. The other type of happiness is eudaimonic happiness. Eudaimonic happiness is more of a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. It's something that you plan on, and it comes when you live in accordance with the purpose that you have chosen for your life. This kind of happiness is typically not called fun, and it's not anything that we talk about much now, but it was defined in the time of Aristotle, and now it has a connotation closer to well-being. The word eudaimonia comes from the Greek, and it literally means good spirits, in the sense that the satisfaction and well-being that comes from eudaimonic happiness comes from pursuing your highest good, the highest purpose that you can imagine. Eudaimonic happiness is the reward that comes from the long-term active pursuit of your own purpose, and it is a life goal. There's some people, like the Dalai Lama, that say it's the only life goal worth your pursuit. The Dalai Lama actually has said that happiness is the purpose of life. And I'm not pretty sure he didn't mean to go out and party. I think he meant a long-term sense of satisfaction. The other thing about this kind of happiness is that it actually grows stronger with hardship and it makes you more resilient. You can think of it this way. Hedonic happiness, fun, is a brief escape from discomfort, is something that you hope happens to you. Eudaimonic happiness is something that you work towards to maintain for a lifetime. From now on, let's agree that when we talk about happiness, especially hardcore happiness like we're talking about here, we're talking about the eudaimonic type of happiness. We're talking about long-term well-being and satisfaction. The big difference is that you actively work to create eudaimonic happiness. You don't passively hope that it happens. By the way, it might interest you to know that there's a whole branch of psychology called positive psychology that studies how to get eudaimonic happiness and the effects of it. So when current thought leaders say it isn't a good idea to chase happiness as a long-term path or profession, they're referring to hedonic escapism. Hedonic happiness is smiles and laughter for a time. Eudaimonic happiness, the kind we're talking about here, hardcore happiness, is a sustained effort for you to live the best life you can envision. It is your highest goal. I add the adjective hardcore to happiness as a reminder that you have to exercise discipline and personal responsibility if you want to manage a long-term pursuit of your purpose and gain eudaimonic happiness. This requires you make clear, reasoned, and many times difficult choices. You have to set boundaries and learn to protect your peace. Above all, you are responsible to translate your good thoughts into impeccable action. It doesn't just happen by talking about it. Hardcore happiness is my shorthand way of saying you may have to endure discomfort and sacrifice when you choose to create your own well-being, but the satisfaction of the eudaimonic path is well worth the challenges. And there's a lot to it. Let's discuss some of the main topics that come up regularly in our discussion of hardcore happiness. They are integral steps on the path to well-being and satisfaction in life. Some of them are brief and pretty easy to incorporate, and some are more complex. We're going to summarize them here, but then as we go forward with this work and these podcasts, we're going to go into each of them at depth. We'll talk about all of them at length as we continue to work together. First up in our list of concepts is mindset. Mindset is the way you view yourself in the world. It's a filter that informs your decision and actions. And the cool thing about it, the secret of mindset, like we talked about before, is that you have the ability, the obligation to choose your mindset every minute of every day. See, when you set your mind with intention, you actively choose your intellectual stance and your emotional tone. When you choose your own thoughts and emotions, you go from reaction to action. This means that you decide how you're going to feel and act, and you're not at the mercy of external situations. Mindset keeps you from feeling like a powerless victim in your own life. If you set the way you look at things, other people and other situations don't have the opportunity to derail you. Let's say you didn't sleep well, but you had to get up early and go to work anyway. You wake up and you're cranky and you haven't had your coffee yet and life sucks and poor me, and you have like a major Monday morning pity party. Instead, you can choose in a heartbeat to be grateful that you have a source of income, and you can choose to be cheerful even though you're temporarily sleep deprived. I'm willing to bet that you have survived tiredness before. Or maybe when you get to your place of work, your coworkers loudly voicing toxic opinions about religion or politics or whatever that's really starting to piss you off. Realize how silly it is to let someone else be in charge of your feelings. Who cares what they think? Smile and remove yourself from the situation. Don't give people the power to decide how you feel. It's your choice, not theirs. The only way people can make you feel bad is if you let them. Why would you let them? Remember that even if you have no control over a certain situation, you're always in control of how you choose to react to it. For a long time now, I've invited my students and clients to adopt a phrase that reminds me to choose my best mindset. Decide that today is going to be a great day. When I was actively doing counseling and therapy, I used to put that at the top of my notes page for every single day. I rewrote it every morning when I came into my office to remind myself, today could be a great day if I only choose for it to be so. Write it down someplace and put it where you see it every morning. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditation said, you always own the option of having no opinion. You can be like the most famous of the Stoics and choose to ignore negativity. Save your energy for something more important. What's more important than mindset? Well, what it is that you set your mindset to do for you. That leads us to the next concept, which is purpose. You have the absolute, unalienable, God-given, if you will, right to choose your own purpose. This is a big deal. Your purpose is the meaning for your life, any meaning that you desire. This isn't something that falls from heaven and appears magically in front of you. It's not a Rosetta Stone that you have to go dig up someplace. And it definitely isn't anything that somebody else decides for you. It doesn't matter how influential those people are in your life, if it's a caretaker or a pastor or an influencer on the internet. My advice is that you make your own purpose. And when you do that, keep two things in mind. First of all, choose a purpose that is congruent with your higher self. Those are foo-foo words, but basically what it means is that when you decide what your meaning is going to be while you're here on this planet, choose something you would be proud of, and choose something that intensely interests you. This is not a simple follow your bliss or do what makes you happy in the fun, hedonic sense. This means find something that you really are interested in, something that turns you on, something that makes you feel something when you read about it or talk about it or watch it. And make sure it's something that is a higher purpose that you have for yourself, something that you can imagine elevates you above where you are right now. And when you choose that purpose, when you say, wait a minute, I think I've got something here, find something that's aligned with a purpose that also benefits others. This is kind of a tougher one, but my purpose, for instance, right now is to try to take what I've learned through years and years of being alive on the planet and being a parent and being a therapist and studying clinical psychology and counseling thousands of people, working in higher education and medicine and all that stuff that has fallen into my background, and bringing it to you. This podcast, me talking to you on here right now, is my purpose, and hopefully it will benefit you. It doesn't have to be something that's onerous to you. Do something that you think will help people that you enjoy. Here's some examples. Could you choose to be a murderer or a rapist or a drug addict? Yeah, you could make those choices, but those choices don't fit even the most selfish of motives. Nobody wants to end up dependent or institutionalized or incarcerated or executed. And like I said in the blog, please don't commit the logical fallacy of thinking I'm implying that drug addiction is purely a choice, that people wake up and go, hey, I think I'll become addicted today. It's exactly the opposite. My contention is that addiction is not a choice anybody would make, even if unavoidable circumstances landed them there. Nobody benefits from those kinds of choices. So when you choose the highest good of which you can conceive, choose one that makes you feel good and is aligned with your own meaning, something that makes sense to you. This will ensure that you pursue your purpose even when the going gets tough. Also, choose a purpose that serves something greater than yourself. This will ensure that your purpose will sustain you even when the going gets tough. Because if you choose something that's impossible and you don't like it and it feels like a chore, let's face it, you're just not going to do it. Hardcore happiness, this eudaimonic happiness that we're talking about, is something that takes a long time to master. It's a life goal. By the way, purpose changes as you go through different phases of your life. When you're a parent, your purpose is to take care of your kids. When you're in school, your purpose is to get through school, hopefully with something that aligns with your own purpose. So when you come out the other end of it and you've got those student loans to think about, it's moving you forward. Purpose changes, but each time you choose a new one, do it with mindfulness. Think about it. Set your mindset, like we talked about earlier, to come up with it. Immanuel Kant was a famous philosopher, and he would have considered the last thing I have to tell you to be what he would have called a categorical imperative. And what that means is that it's something that you should always follow in all circumstances and all situations, regardless of whatever is going on in your life or with other people or your circumstances. And here it is. This is what I say about pursuing your purpose. Never give up. Never give in. Never settle. This is your meaning for life, and don't take it lightly. Those are really the two biggies, mindset and purpose. But there's so many other things that go into that. We're going to talk about all of them. And here's the next one that I would put in the hierarchy of concepts here. It's gratitude. A sense of purpose is a powerful weapon against problems with physical and mental health, and it helps with anxiety and depression. And it's also a source of gratitude, even on crappy days. See, it's not like purpose is your highest overall end goal. It's not a final thing that you chase. Purpose feeds into your hardcore eudaimonic happiness. Mindset feeds into purpose. And then your happiness powers you to do more of that mindset and more of that purpose. And the whole thing is kind of self-perpetuating at that point. The thing that I try to tell people, the concept that I try to pass on to students and clients, is that gratitude defeats despair. You can have the most horrible of days. I've had many in my time on the planet, and I'm sure you have had some, and we're both going to have more if we're lucky enough. But thankfulness is a powerful weapon in the battle to stay on track and remain optimistic. It's even more powerful when you actively express it. If you're having a crappy day, something has happened, you lost a job, something serious, someone close to you dies, the most horrible things you can think of, one way that you can help yourself come out of that and help yourself deal with that is to think about the things for which you are thankful. One of the best ways to express your thankfulness is to write about it by hand, paper and ink. Sit down and write it. This actually activates parts of your brain that you can't get by just talking about it or even typing it out. And we'll get into that in future episodes too. But every day, if you write about the things that you're thankful for in a gratitude journal with a special pen, I've blogged about this before, that you set aside for that purpose alone, it will force you to think about the good things in your life. And even though crappiness may still be happening in your life, you'll feel more optimistic. Again, gratitude defeats despair. The next one might almost seem Pollyanna and overly obvious, but the concept is do the right thing. A great deal of your happiness can be actualized in a simple concept. How do you know when you're doing the right thing? Obviously, at the end of the day, you're happier when you do the right thing than if you did things you knew were not in your best interest, in anyone else's best interest, if you do the wrong thing. How can you tell? Your emotions are a powerful compass as to whether or not you're on your own right path. Let me be clear about this. I'm not saying the right path is what someone else dictates to you, what you read, what somebody else has told you that you should do. I'm talking about what you have decided for yourself. This is purpose again, right? What's in your best interest to go forward? What makes your life worth living? What is your highest good? That's your right path. How do you know when you're doing it? Your emotions will tell you. Do what feels right, what you instinctively know to be the correct thing, even if you're pulled in a different direction. This isn't a deep philosophical paradigm. Just do what you feel like is the right thing. Forget about the peer pressure. Forget about the social media trends and the other things that people tell you. Decide what you, in your most authentic heart, know to be the right thing, and then don't deviate from it. It's basic stuff. It's basic social deontology. Be kind. Don't gossip. You know the stuff. Set your parameters for what you believe is a good way to behave, and then do not let anything sway you from them. Again, this is what we mean by hardcore happiness. Sometimes what you have to do is not what your peers think is cool. Sometimes you have to act against what people are telling you to do because you're being true to yourself. Those things are difficult, and sometimes it costs you friends. Sometimes it costs you relationships. But your course of action is your course of action. It's a part of your mindset, and you have to stick with it. You have to set your boundaries, protect your peace. We'll talk about all that later. But you have to be hardcore about what you believe is right. When you do that, it contributes to your overall eudaimonic happiness and well-being. It's a valid part of your personal purpose, and it's going to pay massive dividends in the gratitude department. Did you have a rough childhood? Have you been betrayed by people close to you? We all have. Has your life's work been destroyed by petty and jealous people? I hope not, but maybe it has. Do you think maybe you're too old or too young or too sick or too poor or too ugly or too lonely? It doesn't matter. Here's the concept: do good anyway. It doesn't matter what's going on, who's pressuring you, do good anyway. That brings us to the next point, and this is a huge one. This next one can feel selfish, but it's not really selfish. It's more self-defense. And here's the concept: protect your peace. I have news for you. Vampires are real. They might not lurk in the darkness and try to steal your blood, but they're definitely trying to steal your energy. What do modern-day vampires look like? They look like toxic people, difficult workplaces, nasty bosses, angry relatives, and polluted cities. Bad air, bad water, overcrowding, negative thoughts pounded into your head through social media. All of this stuff is going to wear you down. If you're one of those people that believes everything is vibrations, as I do, they're going to bring those vibrations down, and you don't want that to happen. Energy vampires are experiences that leave you sad and exhausted and destroy your sense of peace. If your positive mindset is blown away by this stuff, these confrontational, bullying, negative, argumentative encounters can leave you literally drained. You have to protect your peace at all costs. That means no matter what, because if you don't, you're not going to be any use to yourself or anyone else. Here's 3 ideas while we're just summarizing here for you to think about. The first thing you can do is choose your mindset to be totally resistant to negative people and situations. Realize that their words and their negative actions don't concern you, and let their antics pass you by. Pretend like they are water on the back of a positive mindset duck, if there is such a thing. Choose your mindset when you get up and reinforce it, especially before you walk into a potential energy suck situation. You know there's going to be confrontation. You're going into that long, boring meeting, whether it's on Zoom or in purpose, where everyone's going to try to force you to do something you don't want to do. Before you go in there, if you can't leave the situation, set your mindset to be very certain about what you stand for, what you mean, what your situation is, and don't let people alter that idea. Remember, you're trying to protect your own peace here. The second thing is you almost always have the option to remove yourself from negative situations. Just leave. Say to yourself, or maybe to the people in the situation, I choose not to be a part of this. This sets the power back with you. What you're telling this situation is, you don't have control over me. I have control over me. If the situation is so adverse that it's breaking through your positive mindset, don't worry about appearances or hurting one's feelings. Just get out of there. And the third thing, if you frequently find that you have to remove yourself from a situation, you might have to remove the situation from you, and maybe permanently. See, the idea of at all costs is no joke. To protect your peace at all costs may involve leaving people, including loved ones and family. You might have to change jobs. You might have to move to a different city or state. These are drastic last-ditch measures, to be sure, but all of them are better than the potential loss of your sanity or your health or your life. And let's be real, there are a few situations that are inescapable, that you can't ignore, that you can't leave. In these most dire of circumstances, you still have the ability to adjust your own mindset to realize and accept the most fundamental realities of your existence. Remember that you have the ability to choose your mindset. You have already made the decision to choose your purpose, and you have set your boundaries and what is important to you to protect your peace so that you can continue along doing the right thing and moving towards the reason that you're here in the first place. And now we'll get a little bit heavier for a minute. This is what underlies this whole discussion. This is why we're discussing any of this in the first place. I call this next concept practical existentialism. Again, big words, but existential means that we exist. Existential concerns deal with the fact that we exist. This is a super long subject that doesn't lend itself easily to the limitations of a primer of concepts, but we're going to talk about it briefly here, and suffice to say that existentialism concerns itself with the big questions of our existence. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Does my life have meaning? Where do we go when we die? All of these kind of concepts. A great part of the difficulty in these questions is the fact that there are no absolute answers. In fact, these topics are, if we're talking in the verbiage of science and statistics, unfalsifiable. What that means is mathematically and in terms of research, we can't come to a definitive conclusion. Here's what I'm trying to say. There's no scientific experiment that can prove where you came from. There's no mathematical equation that lets you know where you go when you're not here anymore. And when it comes to the meaning of your life, well, we've already discussed that. That's something that you get to choose. That's not something that comes out the other end of a computer simulation. No matter what any authority figure can promise you, the best you can do in these kind of matters is hope and belief and faith. These things might be enough for you, and that's the whole reason that religion exists. It helps you bolster your hope and belief and faith, and there's nothing wrong with that. But where else can you think about getting answers if you're troubled by these questions? Remember that you are always in control of your own thoughts and feelings. There's mindset again, right? In this context, I found that it's useful in day-to-day life when we bring these heady concepts into real everyday existence to use and teach a concept that I call positive opposites. Again, this is just a name I gave this idea to quickly relay the thought behind it, which is positive opposites are thoughts that replace negative thoughts. I'm not talking about empty affirmations and your vision board and sticking Post-it notes on your mirror. All those things are great if they help you. I'm not putting them down. But what I'm talking about here with positive opposites are real-life positive realities that can subordinate negative thoughts to a place outside of your mindset. Again, if we're talking in terms of vibration, these are things you can think and say and do that elevate your vibrations and bring you up out of a negative place. Here's some examples. Let's say you just went through a breakup, and the thought, the emotional feeling, your gut reaction to that is, I'm so lonely. Instead of that, you can choose your mindset, you can change your thoughts to focus on another thought, which is, I have so much freedom now. And again, that might sound kind of Pollyanna and kind of oversimplistic, but try it out. The next time you're in your pity party and thinking, man, I'm so lonely, maybe you can focus on all the things that you can go do and think and participate in that you now have complete freedom from worrying about what anybody else thinks. Not that relationships aren't great, they are essential, and we're going to talk about the benefits of community and belonging later on. Isolation is no joke, it's something to be avoided. But if you're immediately in a place where you're feeling lonely, think about the other things that you can go to. Change your thoughts to focus on the positive. Maybe it's even worse. Maybe you have recently lost a loved one. The thought that'll help you with the grieving and to move forward through that, and I'm not saying you ever get over it completely, but the thing that returns you back to happiness and normal function is the thought, I'm so lucky that our time on earth overlapped. It's so extremely unlikely in the overall scheme of things that I would have ever met or had time with that person, and I treasure every single second that we had together. Again, does that reduce the pain? No, but it does put it in a positive context where you can think, wow, this person is now gone and permanently, and it's horrible. But what a great, great thing it was that I got to intersect with that person across all of deep time and space. What are we talking about? Gratitude again, right? Mindset and gratitude. These things just keep running into each other. Maybe, speaking of existential thoughts, you're terrified of your own mortality. Maybe you have realized that your time here is finite. You're limited. You're not going to be here forever. That's a hard one. There's no way to escape that. How do you take care of that with positive opposites? Realize that the fact you know nothing about what comes next means it's possible that anything could come next. We don't know what's happening. That's not necessarily bad. Rumi has all kinds of great statements about this. Here's one of my favorites from Chuang Tzu, and I probably said that wrong, but he said, just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. I think that's beautiful. We don't know what happens next, and because anything could happen next, you can still be optimistic about even this most dire of consequences. When you're not sure why you're here or what you're supposed to do, remember, in a world where you have no set, predetermined purpose, choose to set your own. Here's another concept that we need to talk about because it goes to an overall idea of personal responsibility. Let's talk about it in light of what we just discussed. It's difficult to fully understand why you're here from an existential standpoint. All of the great existential thinkers, philosophers, psychologists have wrestled with this, from Kierkegaard through Nietzsche to Sartre and others, up to more modern researchers like Csikszentmihalyi. I'm sure I said that wrong, but it's the closest I can get. This guy wrote a book called Flow, which if you haven't read it and you're watching this much of this podcast, you should go read it. Just look up the book Flow and you will find it. Other researchers, especially psychologists like Seligman and Dweck and other contemporaries, and existential psychotherapists who focus on this specific thing, like Rollo May and Viktor Frankl and Irvin Yalom, all those guys, have decided that we struggle with meaninglessness in our lives. I mean, here's the point. In a few generations, no one's even going to know that you ever existed. Think about it. How much do you think about your great-great-great-grand whatever? Granduncle, grandparent, grandma. At first glance, this kind of seems kind of depressing, but really, it's the most liberating mindset you can have. If your existence really doesn't matter in a permanent sense, you can be anything you choose. So choose something wonderful. And all that existentialism brings us back to the point we're discussing right now. You, and you alone, are responsible to choose a path that allows you to be truly, eudaimonically, hardcore happy. You get to choose to pursue your greatest good and your highest purpose as you define it. Nobody else has to make that choice. Nobody else can make that choice. The best you can do when you ask somebody else what your purpose is and how you should act is to get their idea of your life. That's an imperfect fit at best. Remember, personal responsibility here means that you have to choose what you do, and then even more importantly, you have to choose to do it every day. These are not just thoughts, these are actions. It's also a good idea to realize that happiness is intimately related to your mental and physical health and even your longevity. Happiness is no laughing matter. Pardon the pun, but this is truth. This is not a trivial concept. People who report greater levels of happiness have less stress, less anxiety, less depression, and even higher cognitive function, higher creativity, more social connectedness, and everything else. Happiness is correlated with physical beneficial outcomes like a stronger immune system, an enhanced cardiovascular health, reduced inflammation, a reduced risk of chronic disease, and a significant reduction in all-cause mortality. What does that mean? Happy people have improved mental and physical health and actually live longer. All of this talk about happiness isn't just like, oh, I want to have the Disney birds bring me my tea every morning. I want to wake up next to Bambi. All that stuff is great. But happiness, as well as helping other people that are around you as part of your purpose, will actually make you live longer and happier. I've been around long enough to see a lot of people, as they age especially, become brittle shells of themselves because they can't find happiness. They give up. They end up becoming insufferable, and their families put them in nursing homes. One day they just stop eating and wait for death to overtake them, which it rapidly does. Wow, that got real and dark all of a sudden, but I'm not kidding. If you live long enough, you'll see it, and if you have lived long enough, you've already seen it. Happiness is no joke. You have to pursue it hardcore, like we're saying, with everything in you, just like your life depends on it, because it might. Now, I don't want to devolve into a complete research seminar like the classes I used to teach in college, but I want to say a few words about measuring happiness, because it leads into something else that we're going to get to in just a minute here. There's a lot of research that says that the amount of happiness a person can feel might be genetic, actually probably is. It's easy to take that as evidence that you either have the happiness gene or you don't. And some people will go as far as to say, well, if you don't have the happiness gene, you're really never going to be very happy. But there's two major problems with the research on happiness. The first obstacle is in the definition of happiness. Defining happiness is kind of like trying to define love. It's problematic. It's like trying to describe the color green to a person who's never had sight. I guess what I'm trying to say is that happiness is intensely subjective, and it's going to change from person to person. It even changes in the same person. Happiness can change dramatically minute to minute. What made you happy last year or yesterday might not make you happy today. So when we're doing research on happiness, we try to invent what we call an operational definition. That's something that objectively has measurable factors for happiness. But there isn't any specific objective biomarker for happiness. Here's what I mean. If you study stress, you can measure the amount of cortisol in your blood to get an accurate indication of how much stress you're experiencing. If you have emphysema, we can look at your arterial oxygen and carbon dioxide to tell how far along your disease is. If we think you're anemic, we can measure how many red blood cells are in your blood and how much hemoglobin is in those cells. These are things that have a specific number, right, that we can sit down and measure. As behavioral scientists, we have a problem with that when we get to happiness. So we try to come up with descriptions of what happiness might mean to you, and then we ask you to rate them. We make some statements and we say, does this apply to you? We don't have a blood test that tests for happiness. So what we use instead are what we call self-report questionnaires for the main part. This means that you have to decide in the moment how you feel about each description statement that we give you. These descriptions are our best guesses and maybe not relate to you very well, so you're guessing about our guesses. Then we do some math and try to decide if you're happy based on the way you answered our questions, and if so, how happy. This is kind of oversimplified, and I don't mean to disparage behavioral research by any means. I've done a lot of it. But there is no randomized double-blind study, which is the gold standard for research, that is possible to determine something like how happy are you. My point here is to just say that these studies should be taken with hefty doses of statistical salt. Their findings are not reason for you to give up on your own happiness because you don't have the happiness gene. And here's where I'm going with all this stuff. Let's say for a minute that all of that has been solved and we really could do a test that measures exactly how much of your happiness is determined by your DNA. You were born with a certain amount of happiness. Maybe you're fortunate enough to have a happiness genotype, which is the way your genes are arranged, that has expressed itself in a happiness phenotype, which is the physical way that you came out. And you got extreme happiness. You're an extremely happy person just from birth. Or maybe you didn't win the genetic lottery for happiness, and our genetic analysis shows that you're destined to be maybe less happy than the average person. Here's what I want you to know. It doesn't matter. A friend and mentor of mine once told me something that's stuck with me ever since. He said the line of people who don't want more money is the shortest line in the world. As the years have passed, I've come to think that maybe that's the second shortest line. I think maybe the shortest line in the world is the line of people who don't want more happiness. The point is this: no matter what your baseline biological level of happiness, everybody wants more happiness. And most importantly, you can get it. These concepts, these things that we're talking about, mindset and purpose and gratitude and being hardcore about your happiness, is to say that no matter where you are, you can become happier. You can become more fulfilled, more satisfied, have more well-being, mentally and physically. If you have this much happiness, you can get to here. If you have this much happiness, you can get more. And if you're not experiencing very much happiness right now, these principles can pull you up to where you get more of what you want and become more satisfied with your life. Here's some examples. Consider two people that you probably know. You probably will be able to think about two folks that kind of match these descriptions. Let's say person one works at whatever job they got that pays the most for the least effort and lives for the weekend. I know lots of people like that. You probably do too. There's a good chance that person one did a little bit of training, if any, for a job that they've essentially done the same since college or high school. This person binges some version of Netflix and Doritos after work and is constantly in search of the next good time. Said good time most likely involves alcohol and/or recreational drug use. By the way, let me just rant for 5 seconds here. I hate that artificial distinction of drugs and alcohol. Alcohol is a recreational drug. I'm not knocking any of this. I like a good Netflix binge myself occasionally. I like to indulge in things that make me happy. I don't do drugs or alcohol really, but it doesn't matter. The point is that this is a person who is letting life dictate circumstances to them, and they don't really have a plan for going anywhere beyond that. Now think about person two. Person two spent a considerable amount of time after high school learning a trade or getting a degree or apprenticing in a career of personal interest. This is somebody who is passionate about the work that they do, and they see it as part of their purpose. They like a fun weekend as much as the next person, but they don't dread the Monday that follows. This is someone who has learned how to delay gratification. They put the work in early so they could more fully enjoy life later. Person two typically finds a way to get regular exercise and would rather learn something or engage in interactive recreation than sit and passively watch TV on most occasions. People in the person 2 column are either not interested in recreational substances or can mediate that because they've learned that too much of that stuff gets in the way of their well-being. Here's the simplest analogy for that. You drink way too much on the weekend, you have what we in business call the Monday morning sickness, which means you're hungover. Too much of any of these kinds of things is going to make you feel worse in the long run. Remember, hardcore happiness is talking about the long term, the idea that we're talking about a marathon instead of a sprint. What we're trying to do here is make you happier, help you get more satisfaction and well-being in the long run, right? So take a second, picture somebody in each of these 2 categories, and ask yourself these questions. Which of these 2 people is more physically healthy? Which complains less when you're hanging out together? Which person has a more positive overall outlook? You want to know how you can tell that? Which of these people makes you feel better when you're done hanging out with them instead of depleted and depressed when you're done hanging out with them? Which of these 2 people tolerates crappy days and tragic events better? Which is on more meds? We're going to talk a lot about meds, especially psychotropic meds. I have some strong feelings on that I want to share with you. Of course, you get to choose, like everything else, whether you believe them or not. But right now, just think about who takes more meds to get through the day. Person 1, person 2. Which person's making more progress towards interesting job responsibilities or maybe becoming their own boss? Which person gets up looking forward to the day's events? Which person is more satisfied with their life? If you stop and say, hey, person 1, how happy on a scale of 1 to 10 are you with your daily life? With the work you do every day, when the alarm goes off or when you get up in the morning and you think, okay, here's what I have to do today. Are you filled with joy and enthusiasm, at least toleration of what you have to do? Or are you like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to do this again? Which of those people enjoys more long-term happiness? If you've known them for a while, which of those people is up and down on today's great, oh, this sucks, today's great, oh, this sucks? Which person is, even in spite of the downtimes they have, overall saying, you know what, life is pretty good? These are oversimplifications, and of course there's individual differences from person to person, but on the average, I'm betting that person 2 is happier and having an easier time in the negotiation of life. And person 2 statistically has less chance of chronic illness and mental health disorders, more friends, and a significantly reduced risk of all-cause mortality. What is that? That's all the reasons that you might die put together. So basically, this person is going to live longer and be happier. Why are we talking about all this? Because no matter where your baseline happiness is, if you're focused on mindset and purpose and protecting your peace and focusing on gratitude, like we've been talking about, you are going to be happier. You can be person 2, no matter which person you are today. What's the difference? Person 2 has done the hard work. This is why we call it hardcore happiness. To truly achieve a eudaimonic, long-term happiness, you have to be hardcore about the pursuit of the work that you find to be meaningful and satisfying, even if you have to put in long hours to get there, even if it pays less in the beginning. You have to be relentless in the care of your mind and body, even when inertia and laziness and the couch is telling you to take the easy road. You have to learn how to say no. You have to learn to let the heartbreak of life's tragedies become fuel for the fire of your hardcore happiness, warrior spirit. I know that term's been used a lot, but man, it's really important here. When you do that, you can become emotionally invincible because you don't depend on anyone or anything else to keep you afloat in the storms of life. The vast majority of my blog articles and newsletters and books and videos and podcasts all deal with the details of how to get this hardcore happiness. There are specific evidence-based actions you can take to gain eudaimonic happiness and well-being. Right now, though, in this moment, pause this video and think about the only decision you have to make. Who do you want to be? You get to choose. It's one decision away. You can decide to be a happier person. You can commit to the work. You can adopt a hardcore happiness attitude. You can change your mindset to be positive no matter what, and you can go for a purpose that you choose that makes everything better for you, and you can reap the benefits. I believe once you determine your mindset and are actively pursuing your purpose, you start to add positive people and positive situations. You start to leave behind negative circumstances. In this way, you're building your reality in a way that supports and nourishes you. In other words, you can create your world. And I want to add something as a longtime mental health professional that I think needs to be said. There's going to be some days that no matter what you try, no matter how hardcore your happiness is, no matter how much you're protecting your peace, no matter how much you're focused on your purpose, you're just going to feel sad. Everything is going to remind you of something that makes your heart break, and all the usual things you do to feel better might not work. When that happens, just immerse yourself in your work, keep your head down, try not to be distracted, try to be productive, and know that even if you can't feel it, tomorrow's probably going to be better. I have days like that. Everybody I know, the freaky happy people that I know have bad days. The way you get through them is you just do what you know you need to do. This is why purpose is good, because you have an idea of the things you need to do, even if you're not feeling it today, and just know tomorrow's going to be better. I'm talking about what we call situational dysphoria here, just feeling bad for a day, just something triggers you, an anniversary date. We're going to talk about many of these things that happen in the future, but I'm talking about a bad day. If you suspect that this is going on and you can't break it, and maybe you actually are depressed, not just in the moment, but like maybe you have a depression happening, please see a mental health professional. Take care of that. I'll be here when you're ready to come back. I was trained as a scientist. I've done original research and have published in peer-reviewed journals, and I value the scientific method. So one of the things I'd like to do is include relevant or at least interesting articles at the end of each podcast. You can choose to ignore these, or if you're a science geek, you can look them up and read about them. The point here, as I've said before, is that a lot of this stuff is not just my own opinions. It is my lived experience. It is things that I have come to know in my own experience work, but there's also science behind it. So if you're into that kind of stuff, I'm working on a reference section in the website. It'll be listed among the links right at the top of my website that will link all these articles for you to read. Here's the two I want to throw in there today, since we've been talking about the two types of happiness. If you're familiar with neurotransmitters, the things like dopamine and serotonin and acetylcholine, the little chemicals in your brain that make you feel and act in certain ways, I think it's interesting that there's research that links dopamine to hedonistic pleasure seeking and serotonin to well-being and satisfaction. That's kind of a big deal, because the people who are into way too much porn and way too much Netflix and way too much doom scrolling on their phone are seeking a dopamine hit. That tends to be more of the hedonistic kind of short-term pleasure seeking that we talked about. Serotonin, on the other hand, tends to lead to more satisfaction, well-being, the eudaimonic kind of happiness that we've discussed. Here's the research. This first one is kind of the seminal finding about dopamine and hedonistic pleasure seeking. It talks about the mesolimbic dopamine system, and it is called Dopamine and Hedonic Reward. It's by Berridge and Kringelbach, and it's called Pleasure Systems in the Brain. I will post the citation for this, so if you're interested, you can look that up. The second one talks about serotonin and its role in longer-term eudaimonic kind of well-being happiness. It's by Young. It was published in 2007, and it's called How to Increase Serotonin in the Human Brain Without Drugs. It's an article in the Journal of Psychiatry and Neuroscience, and I will link that also. It's interesting. It's an overview of serotonin's role in mood stability, emotional regulation, and sustained well-being. And it even talks about ways to get pharmacological methods to support healthy serotonin function and non-pharmacological methods, natural ways to get more serotonin. We're going to be talking a lot about both of those things as we go on, but I thought I would throw that in the closing research section. The Hardcore Happiness Podcast is live every Thursday in video form on YouTube and in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. You can visit the podcast page at jeffwwelsh.studio, where you can see past episodes and subscribe so you never miss an episode. My website is jeffwwelsh.com. It has a contact page where you can get a hold of me, leave your thoughts, or if you're interested in having me speak to your organization, let me know. The links page on that same website will take you to my YouTube, Facebook, Substack, and Medium accounts. It also has the Hardcore Happiness blog page and links to my accounts on Instagram, X, and more. To support this community, you can donate through my Patreon account. Thanks for taking the time to create your world. I'm Dr. Jeff W. Welsh.